So do you have any? Forgive her because I like her a lot. She's a nice lady. She's different. Yeah, I have the one that came out Friday. How's the new job? Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Okay. I actually left my phone in the office. I left my phone back in the office. It's got my wallet. It's got everything in it. Well, I do that, but it also has, one of the things with the stuff in the back. So I have my wallet.
I used to be the tartan of this group. Yeah.
This is literally their second meeting. So I'm not even sure he knows who the tartan of the meeting is yet. But.
Well, it's a good group. You enjoy it.
Yeah. So I like the new job. Who's the attorney? She's great. No, she's great. What happened to her? He asked her if this is better. So she went on the feet and stayed.
Yeah. That's always.
Good to see you.
Yeah, me too.
Baseball players. Well,
There's just so much open space. And it's kind of wild. We're not subdividing lots.
they're a good team. Houston's a good team. Yeah, I grew up a Dodger fan that liked the Angels because I was here, and they're different leagues, so that. And then kind of when that whole
Good evening. Welcome to the Costa Mesa Planning Commission meeting of February 25th, 2019. I call the meeting to order and ask Commissioner Zick to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Zick, very much. Julie, roll call, please.
Chair D'Erical,
Here.
Vice Chair Harlan,
Here.
Commissioner Navarro-Woods. Here. Commissioner Zick.
Here.
Commissioner Colbert.
Present.
Thank you, Julie. Commissioners, if it's okay, I would like to rearrange the agenda slightly. New business item move up to right now. Actually, we want to recognize our former legal counsel, Yolanda Summerhill, who has left us, boo-hoo, but gone to very nice confines over Newport Beach. So if Ms. Summerhill would join us at the podium, and we have a resolution for you, and I will join you down there, and I will say a few words, and then we'll give you some wall art. What? I'm not going to get sentimental. Oh. So it's nice that actually I want to thank my commissioners again for appointing me chair, because that means I get to come down and recognize this dear lady who has served the city of Costa Mesa as its legal counsel with the Planning Commission in particular for many years. There are a lot of whereases here because Yolanda's worth a lot of whereases because she's earned a lot of whereases. But I do want to highlight the last two. And they are, whereas Ms. Summerhill fulfilled her responsibility as counsel to the Planning Commission in a conscientious and professional manner. And whereas Ms. Summerhill served the city of Costa Mesa well and faithfully as counsel to the Planning Commission, be it resolved that the Costa Mesa Planning Commission hereby commends and thanks Yolanda Summerhill for her service to the Planning Commission and the city of Costa Mesa, passed and adopt this 11th day of February, because it was the last meeting, February of 2019. And Yolanda, I just want to thank you very much for your service. I'm so proud of you for your new appointment to Assistant City Attorney in Newport Beach. You'll do well there. And this is for you, and I want to thank you very much. And ask my commissioners, fellow commissioners, to come down and we'll do a quick group picture.
I'll just say one or two words, yeah. Just briefly, I was with this group for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, and I really learned a lot about land use and dealing with the public and dealing with staff and, of course, these elected bodies and legislative bodies. So it was a great experience. There were a lot of tough times, but I think those made me a better attorney that hopefully I can represent Newport Beach in today. So I want to really thank you guys. I miss you a ton, but I'm right next door. So.
Okay, thank you, Yolanda, so much for your service to the city, and it's good to see you, and like I said, stay in touch. We have no announcements or presentations tonight other than what we've just presented to Ms. Summerhill, so it takes us to public comment to ensure fair and equal treatment of all who appear before the Planning Commission and to expedite city business. Speakers may be limited to 3 minutes during public comment to speak on any item within the Planning Commission's jurisdiction which is not listed on the agenda this evening. This time may be extended for good cause by the chair or by a majority vote of the Planning Commission. So is anyone here to speak tonight during public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to Planning Commissioner comments and suggestions, and I will start with Commissioner Colbert.
No comments.
Okay, Commissioner Zick.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Woods.
None tonight, thanks.
Okay, and Vice Chair Harlan.
Thank you. Well, while she's still here, I want to express my appreciation to Yolanda as well. I had the pleasure, and it was a pleasure, sitting next to you for 2 years.
And I certainly am grateful for your sense of humor, your professionalism, your responsiveness, and obviously our loss is Newport's gain. So I wish you the best of luck. That's it.
Great, thank you, and ditto. So have a nice night, my dear. Okay, and that brings us to the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be acted upon in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the Planning Commission, staff, or the public request specific items to be discussed and are removed from the consent calendar for separate discussion. Items removed from the consent calendar will be discussed and voted upon immediately following Planning Commission action on the remainder of the consent calendar. Members of the public who wish to discuss the consent calendar items should come forward to the microphone upon invitation of the chair and state their name and item they wish to discuss. Are there any commissioners who wish to pull any of the consent calendar items?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Zick.
item number 2, please.
Okay, we will pull number 2. Yes, sir. Member of the public, which item?
Number 2.
Number 2 as well. You wish to pull consent calendar items, sir? CC, okay, so is that the general plan conformity for Airway Avenue? Yes. Okay, we'll pull that as well. Sir?
2 as well.
Okay, so we are pulling for separate discussion items from the consent calendar, CC number 2 and CC number 3. Is there a motion on the remainder of the consent calendar, which is the minutes, item number 1, and item 4, general plan conformity report for 1885 Anaheim Avenue? Is there a motion?
Move the items.
Motion by Commissioner Zick. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Colbert. Call for the question.
That motion carried 5-0.
Okay. Gentlemen, I'm going to have Commissioner Zick will pull item number 2. Commissioner Zick will make his comments first or ask questions, and then we'll have you speak to it. Thank you,
Mr.
Commissioner
Chairman.
Zick.
Thank you, sir. My first question for staff has to do with the process. My question it relates to the homeowner's role in the process of recording the vacation of property. I recognize that this property owner made the initial request. My question is, could we, the city, take the same action without the homeowners making the request?
Mr. Curtis or Mrs. Lee or Bart?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, this city has at times voluntarily vacated excess right-of-way when it's not needed anymore. Is that the question?
Yeah, I think that answers that question. So then my related question is for all the properties along 22nd Street, and let's just say the block starting at Orange Avenue, how many of those properties have had the excess right-of-way vacated, if any?
I do not have that information with me at this time.
Would it make sense that if we desired to vacate the excess right-of-way at this property, that we, the cities, would similarly be interested in vacating the property all along 22nd? Wouldn't that make sense? And is there a reason why we wouldn't process all of that at the same time?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, we were addressing the specific request at this time. Since there are no plans to do any construction, we actually do not know the actual needs of future right-of-way for the construction of improvements. And that is the reason why we only addressed this one address that had requested a specific request.
Okay, I had a little bit of trouble hearing all of that. So tell me again why we wouldn't process.
Mr. Mee, if you could bring the microphone over a little bit closer, thank you.
All right, let me oh, it sounds much better. I can even hear myself too. So we are addressing this specific request because we do not have the final plans for construction, and we do not know what the final needs for future right-of-way are going to be for the construction of all the improvements.
So what you're saying is it's entirely possible we would need the excess right-of-way in front of some of the adjacent properties?
More than likely, based on the current master plans that we have, we will need an additional 5 feet to complete the bike lane improvements along this stretch of 22nd Street.
Okay, so that takes me to my second line of questioning, and it has to do with the dimensions and the arithmetic to get to those. So in the staff report, under the background, which is on handwritten page 2, you identify that 22nd was originally a secondary arterial with an 84-foot ultimate right-of-way, and that in 2016 it was downgraded to a collector arterial, which only requires a 60-foot ultimate right-of-way. Yet, it appears as if there is currently a 70-foot ultimate right-of-way existing, and I'm wondering when that occurred. In your letter, or I shouldn't say your letter, but in the letter that is on handwritten page 10, it's identified that this standard collector has also been designated as a Class 2 bike facility, and that requires an ultimate width of 70 feet. So I'm led to believe that at some point in time, between 2016 maybe and now, the street was changed from a simple collector arterial to a Class 2 bike facility. So just, can you enlighten me on that?
I am going to start, and I'll request the assistance of our planning department. So with the adoption of the general plan, the city also adopted the 2 master plans, the master plan of highways and the master plan of bikeways. The 60-foot width meets the requirements of the master plan of highways, but with the adoption of the master plan of bikeways that added the 5-foot bike lane, that now requires an extra 5 foot on either side of the street.
Okay, so this is where I get into the arithmetic problem that I have. And that is that if I look at the road at 40 feet, and then the staff report indicates that there's 10 feet on the opposite side of the street, that's identified on handwritten page 2. And then of the 20 feet that is on the, I'll call it the applicant's side of the street, of that 20 feet, 10 feet is identified for the sidewalk and parkway, 5 feet is identified for the bikeway, and then 5 feet is what you are proposing to vacate as excess right-of-way. And if I do the arithmetic and I take that 5 feet out, I'm left with 65 feet. So if a Class 2 bikeway facility requires an ultimate width of 70 feet, how can we give away 5 feet and be left with only 65 feet? I don't understand that.
So this is where the dimensions become a little bit complicated. If you look at the other half of the street, and I am looking now at handwritten page 12, a copy of the assessor parcel map.
Yes, sir?
You will see there that on I'm going to call the south side of the street where it shows 30 feet. So when the city moves ahead with the ultimate improvements for 22nd Street, including the 5-foot bike lane, the city will require acquiring an extra 5 feet of right-of-way from the south property to keep the center line of the street along the same alignment and be the same distance from both the south side and the north side. So we are short 5 feet from the south side, and we will have to acquire that in the future.
Commissioner Zick, do you?
You meant north side.
He meant north side?
Thank
Yes,
you, Mr.
I meant
Chairman.
north side. I had, sorry.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, sir. Please state your name for the record, please.
Rob Hamers. I'm a civil engineer, and I prepared the tentative parcel map and the site plan. Mr. Cernicki is here, along with his sister and husband, so all three property owners are here. And to answer the gentleman's question, that to make it 70 feet, you'd want 35 feet on each side of the street. Right now, Mr. Cernicki has a 40-foot right-of-way, so the city is planning on giving him back 5 feet. That's how the resolution is prepared. If the city gives Mr. Cernicki only 5 feet of right-of-way back, he has to move a block wall that has a fence on top, and he also has to move an electronic gate 5 feet, because they will both be out of compliance unless he gets the entire 10 feet back. His property was built to the 30-foot half-street. Mr. Cernicki is not asking for anything special. What the proposal is, and I'm a civil engineer, and this question should be asked of your city engineer and your director of public services, that instead of what's being proposed in the Planning Commission report, that the city give back all 10 feet to Mr. Cernicki in exchange for an irrevocable offer to dedicate 5 feet anytime in the future. That way, if and when the funding is available, that you have already had the opportunity, you have the opportunity at that time to accept the dedication. Mr. Cernicki is trying to file a parcel map that would divide the two lots, divide the single lot into 2 lots, so that his residence and his sister's residence would be single-family residential. And it meets all the standards. The tentative map was approved by the Planning Commission. So once again, the request is not for anything that compromises the city's rights, but to grant Mr. Cernicki or vacate all 10 feet now in exchange for an irrevocable offer that would be recognized on the parcel map, that the city could, irrevocable offer for 5 feet, so the city could take its 5 feet at any time in the future. And for now, Mr. Cernicki would be able to record his parcel map without having to remove the fence and wall and move the gate. That is the request. Thank you. Be happy to answer any questions if there are.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions of the speaker? So, question of staff and or legal counsel. It seems to me the request of Mr. Cernicki's civil engineer would require us to enter some kind of negotiation or agreement. And we have no language for any of that this evening if we were to entertain this proposal. So would we even be able to act on something like that tonight, Mr. Preziosi?
Chair, you would not. This is not the correct forum for that agreement. The sole limited purposes of tonight's hearing, or it's not, excuse me, not a hearing, tonight's report, is report on general plan conformity or not. This is not the opportunity to grant his request. I understand his request, but this is not the forum to do so. That forum would be either through engineering and or come to City Council. The City Council makes the ultimate determination, but it's not here for this body right now.
As I suspected. Thank you for your counsel on that. Okay, thank you, sir, very
May I
much.
clarify that, please? It's not really an agreement. It's a simple statement on the parcel map.
Right, but it's not on our agenda tonight. We're just doing a general plan conformity report. So that's all, that's the
agreed.
scope of our report tonight.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this item? Yes, sir.
Mark Cernicki here.
Yes, sir.
And then my brother-in-law and my sister over there, the other property owners. And right in the agenda, it says conformity and development. There's no development. This place has been there since, my house has been there since 1947. And the front house has been there since 1958. Placement of the wall is there, same place it's always been, both walls. So talk about conformity, conformity is keeping things the same. And if I can't imagine how much I'm not signed up as a bikeway commissioner person, but I've helped bring back the bike rodeos to the Newport Mesa School District. And yes, I'm doing it again this year. And I can't imagine where the funds would come from to buy everybody's, if you look at all the properties from, let's say Orange Street till Irvine Boulevard, who's going to come up with the money, which is, I can't fathom how much money that would be to buy everyone's 5 feet from them, and just doesn't seem right. And Class 3 bike lane is just like 19th, like Broadway, like every other decision that's been made by the Bikeway Commission is on the east side of Costa Mesa. They paint sharrows, and I became part of the outspoken person about the Bikeways Commission because they blocked the bike lane with planter boxes instead of, when they painted the sharrows, just leave the street as it is. And now people that ride their bikes on those streets have to go into traffic. And it kind of slowed it down, I guess. And that's another thing is we don't want 22nd Street to become wider and faster and less likely to ride your bike because you're getting 50-mile-an-hour traffic on our 25-mile-an-hour street. And that's basically...
Okay, so we're drilling down farther than what... So just so you know, when it says conformity with the general plan, it doesn't mean the meaning you assign to it, which means everything has to stay in place. Government code requires the city that if we're going to acquire property or we're going to let go of property, we have to make sure that that acquisition or relinquishment conforms to our general plan. That's all that's happening here tonight. So it has nothing to do with bikeway master plan, how wide the street's going to be. This is basically just saying that the city's vacation of this easement is in conformance with the general plan. That's the only question we're answering here tonight. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Am I correct? Okay, good. I'm glad I am. Yes, Ms. Parker.
Okay, so here's a nice East Side family that's been there forever, and I feel like you're hassling the longtime residents. My God, how long has the fence been there? Forever. I know where your house is. You guys let the sober living people get away with murder. You let South Point developer get away with murder. I cannot believe what you are allowing to go on the East Side. And then you give a nice longtime family that wants to stay together on their own property any kind of trouble. I'm against it. Thank you.
Okay. Got to have my 3 minutes, guys. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Got here late. I like you. We can't see him. You got to get that flag out of the way so we can see all the people on the dais.
He's behaving himself. Go ahead.
But let me reiterate. Hi, Zeke. A good idea is a good idea. That's the definition of a good idea. I'm not going to harp on it because you don't want me to. You guys are in place to take a look at projects, to make an educated decision regarding that project on behalf of the constituents. In some cases, you're doing it. In some cases, you're not. I understand that you guys are obligated by law, and you've got a bunch of other legal mumbo-jumbo that you got to deal with. But for God's sake, whose side are you guys on? I mean, and I'm not saying it to put you on a spot. As an ethic question, whose side are you guys on? For you guys, this might just be a stepping stone to the next thing. For us on the east side, on the west side, Costa Mesa resident, this is where we live. These are our properties. These are our investments. And you guys are not thinking perhaps clearly or whatever it is. For whatever reason, we are your constituents. You are up there on our behalf. End of story, done deal. You can't handle it, we'll get somebody else that can do it. Somebody in a city can't do it, we're going to get them fired and we're going to get somebody else in there. It's that simple. It doesn't have to be complicated, but you guys choose to make it complicated. Ms. Parker comes up, I come up, we give you our ideas. You don't have to go with them. But take them for whatever you can take them. We're out. She's on the beat every day. I'm a general contractor. My title is babysitter because I deal with other people's headaches that they can't figure out what to do with. Kind of your job. Please, a good idea might be a good idea if you look at it from outside the box in a creative way. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Chair.
Vice Chair Harlan.
So question of staff, Mr. Mejia. So assuming we adopt the report tonight, what is the next steps for the city as well as for the applicant?
So the next step is to present this to the City Council, and we will present all the options that we have gathered so far.
Okay, so the proposed solution of a 10-foot vacation with an irrevocable offer, has that been discussed with staff, or is this the first time this is being raised?
It has not been discussed with staff, and this is the first time that we hear about that offer.
Well, yes, you're correct, Commissioner Colbert. It's in the letter, but it's first time it's being presented, at least. So, okay, so it seems that we will take action on this, and if it's up to the council to make a final determination, as it typically is, that may be something they would consider, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So if I could follow on with that, just so we're clear, whether or not it's a 5-foot revocation or a 10-foot revocation is immaterial to the general plan conformity report tonight. Is that correct? It could be 5 feet or 10 feet.
Staff evaluated the 5-foot vacation as the proposal in terms of general plan conformity. The 10-foot vacation was originally proposed by the applicant, and it was reviewed by the Bikeways and Walkability Committee, and the Bikeways and Walkability Committee recommended the 5-foot instead move forward. So 10 feet was discussed, not in terms of an irrevocable offer and the things that we've discussed this evening, but 10-foot was originally requested by the applicant, as you saw in their original request letter. But because the Bikeways and Walkability Committee recommended that only a 5-foot vacation be moved forward, that determination was made by them because of the master plan of bikeways. And because the master plan of bikeways is incorporated into the general plan, it's staff's position that the 5-foot vacation would be consistent with the general plan and that the 10-foot vacation would not. Having said that, we haven't had a chance to discuss the irrevocable offer idea and how that would work exactly, but that's our position this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Lee, for the history. That's very helpful for me. Commissioners, any further questions or comments or a motion?
And Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Zick.
Well, I guess I'll make a motion and then do have comments. So my motion would be to adopt the resolution and recommend the approval of the staff action PC-19.
Okay, I'll second that if you have comments.
My comment is that it feels to me that if the next step for this is to push it in front of City Council, something feels incomplete, where the City Council is going to get this thing, and I just feel like we haven't really done all the work that we should be doing before it goes up to City Council. That's just my comment. But I agree, if staff says that this is in conformity with the general plan, then, then it certainly is, and we should move forward with that.
Okay. Commissioners, any other comments? Okay, call for the question.
That motion carried 5-0.
Great, thank you. And that will go to the City Council, so that's not an appealable decision. Now we have consent calendar item number 3, and somebody pulled that? Yes, sir. And this is general plan conformity report and resolutions for the proposed acquisition of real property located at 3175 Airway Avenue. Yes, sir.
My name is James Mitchell, and my comments are that the area in question has been evolving for many years. It is now more office use than industrial. I find the report somewhat misleading because the planned use of the building is known and therefore isn't speculative. And the planned use is not compatible with an office, predominantly office area, although it's zoned industrial. And finally, the area really isn't suitable for any kind of residential use, in that there are no sidewalks, no parks, no stores. Healthcare is at great distance, and it's just not particularly suitable for the intended use.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. Commissioners, are there any comments on this item or a motion? Please. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so what I really resent about this whole process is that Tom Hatch hired a guy and paid him $100,000 to go around the city and look at property. And they came up with a ridiculous place on the west side. And there are some other properties out here that are actually better than this building. They're all set. They're handicap accessible with a elevator and a beautiful gated thing. I'm suspect of who owns this property. I'm like I was suspect about the west side, the Schock family, and Tim Carr, Villa Real Estate. I'm just a little suspect of how these properties ended up on this list and who owns the properties. And I feel that I know we have to move forward. I know we have to do something. But there's a great building right around the corner on Briggs Street. I suggested it when I saw the West Side thing. I ran over there in the rain. Why are you paying a consultant $100,000 to find properties that the residents know about? We're not asking for $100,000. Why don't you use our brains? We're out here. We could have helped. But instead, let's just throw money at a consultant. And he didn't even come up, with this property originally. I find the whole process, I call foul on it. Do not blame the present city council. I'm not blaming you guys. I'm blaming Tom Hatch and anyone he hired. I'm also upset about what you're about to do with this building and the new bridge shelter right down the street. There's a John Moorhart property, one property away from here, that's already causing trouble. I think you could have purchased that building. Why didn't you even look at purchasing that building? He would have sold it. But of course, the guy you paid $100,000 to couldn't possibly think of that one.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
So a couple of weeks ago, I actually had a meeting at City Hall. and I was told to kind of back off a bit off you guys because you're going to do the right thing. Because I brought to the table the same thing that Annie did about a particular building off of Red Hill, not Airway. And it's dumbfounding me because there's nothing in that area that would accommodate these individuals that you're trying to put over there. There's no bus service. There's no eateries. There's nothing. It's an industrial zone. Yes, the city can go over and do an overlay and rezone, and yes, they can do all that. But the question still stands. Number one is why? And number two, who's doing it? And as Ms. Parker said, the previous council hired this individual, and I've looked at every single property that they recommended. And the one that I think suited me best, that was on the list, was 77 Fair Drive. Now, if you're paying somebody $100,000 and he comes up with the idea and puts City Hall as one of the potential sites, Zeke, that is not a good idea. That is clearly not a good idea. Because where are we going to put all these city employees? So for you guys to go and approve this, let me tell you this. Let me put you on notice. Take it for whatever you want to and however you want it. Because I've had the previous mayor, well, this is a few times back here, Scott Monahan. His comment to me was, bring it on. So let me tell you that. You guys approve this crap, bring it on. You know what? I have no problem spending my hard-earned cash to sue the city over this shit. I'm tired of it. I am sick of it. I've done it once. I'll do it again. You want to go toe-to-toe? Bring it on. We're telling you, we're asking you, we're begging you, do the right thing. The only one that's going to benefit out of this is that wonderful gentleman sitting at the corner with their attorney firm. That's the only gentleman that's going to benefit by doing this. I'll spend my money, you'll spend my money again, and we're going to get to what? Why? Why are we doing this? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to this item? Okay, seeing none. Commissioners, comments or motion? Commissioner Woods.
You know, my husband's an attorney, and he would concur with what you just said. The attorneys always win. Nobody else does. Listen, there's no perfect solutions to this. But I do recall the city did put a call out saying, you know, inviting the community to share, you know, any lots that might be available for this kind of use. And I think I recognize that the city's in a really tough place. I mean, I live in College Park next to Wilson Park, and we haven't been able to use our park for about 5 to 6 years, probably longer. It's gotten a little bit better, you know, they've really done their part to clean up, but the homeless problem hasn't gotten any better in Costa Mesa, and we're really, you know, we're kind of, I feel like the city's backed into a corner as far as what our options are. And I thought about, well, would something like this function better in a residential area so that it's closer to, you know, well, just normal residential life. There's close to parks and grocery stores and be a place where you can sort of integrate and support a group of people that's really struggling. And I could imagine the level of pushback that we would get from our residents if we cited it in a location like that, and maybe industrial is sort of like the next best thing. It's not perfect, but I don't think we're going to be able to find the perfect place. So as for me, I will be supporting the motion because I support our city council and I support the intention behind trying to resolve our homeless problem and enforce the anti-camping ordinance. So I will move, adopt a resolution that we adopt this report for the purposes of reporting on, do I have to read the whole thing? Purposes.
Move staff recommendation.
I'll move staff recommendation.
Thank you. I'll second that. Are there any comments on the motion? Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The comment I want to make is that I think there's a misperception of what we're actually doing tonight. And I want the public to be very clear about this. To my mind, and staff, please correct me if I'm wrong, this is essentially a screening, a general plan conformance of a particular location for an emergency shelter. It's that simple. We're not approving the site. In fact, the staff report makes it very clear that even if the city acquires the property, then there still has to be a code amendment related to this particular site. So this is very preliminary. Nothing is a foregone conclusion. So I'm very comfortable with the staff report on this. I concur with Commissioner Wood's comments. I feel like the city has been forced with some tough decisions, and this is as good as an option as we have here. I think the fact that we've been unable to enforce our anti-camping ordinances is a problem, and everybody would agree that we want to try and ameliorate the homeless situation. So I see this as a step in the right direction.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Harlan. Commissioner, any other comments? I'll just echo Vice Chair Harlan's comments. This is strictly a general plan conformity report relative to the land use designation of the property in the general plan. And that's all it is. And as Vice Chair Harlan correctly pointed out, the zoning is going to have to be amended, or the zone code has to be amended to allow the use later on by the council. So that's their decision. And so I will support the motion. And call for the question.
That motion carries 5-0.
Okay. Thank you very much. And that brings us to public hearing item number 1.
Public hearing item number 1. Tentative parcel map 2018-136 for the subdivision of a single parcel into 2 parcels at 2183 Tustin Avenue. This is a call to report any ex parte communications.
Thank you, Julie. Commissioners, any ex parte communications to report? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Arias, it's yours.
Okay, good evening, Chair, Planning Commission. The item before you tonight is tentative parcel map 2018-136, which is a request for the subdivision of a 14,350 square foot parcel into 2 separate parcels to allow for the future development of a residential project. The project site is located along Tustin Avenue in Eastside Costa Mesa between 21st Street and 22nd Street. The property is zoned R1 single family residential and has a general plan land use designation of low density residential. And the adjacent properties have similar zoning and land use designations. Here are a couple site photos of the existing development. The top 2 photos provides a view from the front, or a view of the front of the house, and then the 2 bottom are of the 2 adjacent properties to the left and to the right. Here's the proposed parcel map for the project. Both lots satisfy minimum lot area requirements, with parcel 1 being proposed at 6,043 square feet, and parcel 2 proposed at 8,307 square feet. Additionally, the rear lot would be sufficient size to allow an accessory dwelling unit, and there are no common areas or shared access easements that would tie these lots together. The configuration of the rear parcel is proposed as a flag lot with vehicular access to the rear parcel from a driveway accessed off of Tustin Avenue. The zoning code requires a minimum lot width of 50 feet for newly subdivided parcels. However, an exception to this requirement applies when the existing R1 lot has an average lot depth that equals or exceeds 200 feet. The existing lot depth of this parcel is 205 feet. I did also want to point out on handwritten page 2 of the staff report, the planning application summary, the lot width of parcel 1, it currently reads 38, but should read 58. Furthermore, there are no conflicts with the city's or other utility agencies' right-of-way or other easements. Therefore, the proposed map is consistent with city codes and the State Subdivision Map Act. The scope of the Planning Commission's review tonight for this application is only in regard to the subdivision of the property. As it relates to the future development, two-story single-family residences that comply with all applicable development standards and the city's residential design guidelines would be approved through standard plan check procedures with a notice to abutting property owners. And then the building permits would be issued over the counter. The existing residences on the property are located in an area that, if the tentative parcel map were to be approved and recorded, would create a non-conforming scenario with the existing residents being across the property line. Therefore, staff has included a condition of approval that requires the demolition of the existing residence to be completed and plans to be submitted for the new residences prior to the final recordation of the parcel map. As it relates to public comments, as of 12 p.m. today, a total of 18 public comments have been received in opposition of the proposed project. The majority of the comments raised concerns with the proposed lot split not being compatible or in character and scale with the existing neighborhood. Staff believes that the proposed lot split is consistent with lot sizes both along 22nd Street and with newly subdivided lots based on lot sizes and other lot splits in the same general area. The proposed parcel map complies with all applicable development standards as well as the State Subdivision Map Act, and any future development would be reviewed separately subject to all applicable codes and requirements. Therefore, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution to find the project categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act per CEQA Guidelines Section 15315, Class 15 for minor land divisions, and approve tentative parcel map 2018-136 subject to conditions of approval. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions, and the applicant is also available.
Excellent. Thank you for your report, Mr. Arias. Commissioners, any questions of staff? Commissioner Woods.
Yeah, have the lot dimensions been confirmed through the parcel data recorded with county assessor?
Commissioner Woods, would you repeat your question? We couldn't hear it down here.
Have the lot dimensions, so one of the findings of the staff is that the lot dimensions are in conformance with zoning code to be able to subdivide a parcel of this unique size. Have the parcel dimensions, lot width and depth, been confirmed with county assessor parcel data?
If you'll give us a moment, we're taking a look at the assessor's map.
Please.
Should I move on to my next question while you guys are looking?
We've got an answer for you. The assessor's parcel map shows the lot width at 70 feet and the lot depth at 205 feet, and that is consistent with staff's dimensions.
Okay. My second question has to do with what's written in Table 1332 for residential development standards. And it does say that the minimum lot width for newly subdivided lots for an interior lot would be 50 feet. And an exception to this requirement is when the existing R1 lot that is proposed to be subdivided has an average depth that equals to or exceeds 200 feet. So what does an exception mean in that sentence? Is that something that's just sort of subject to the discretion of the Planning Commission, or is that something, does planning staff have like a specific guidelines on, you know, what constitutes an exception and how much would be allowed under that?
Chair and Commission, The wording of the code and the use of the word exception is not the same as when we're talking about, for example, a master plan, or we're talking about exceptions or deviations from the code. This
Okay.
is actually the way that it's worded in the code is that all newly subdivided lots shall have frontage on a dedicated street equal to or in excess of the required minimum lot width, which is 50 feet. And an exception to this requirement applies when the existing R1 lot that is proposed to be subdivided has an average depth that equals to or exceeds 200 feet. So essentially what that means is if the lot depth is more than 200 feet, then the 50-foot required lot width does not apply, and that is the exception.
Okay.
So in this case, it's written into the code.
Okay, got it. Thanks so much.
Okay, commissioners, any other questions of staff? All right, I will open the public hearing and ask the applicant to come forward. State your name for the record, please, sir.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. My name is Michael Mossman.
And Mr. Mossman, can I ask if you have read the conditions of approval, and if you agree with them?
Yes, I have read the conditions of approval, and I do agree with them.
Okay, you're present. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to clear a couple things up, because I do know there were a few letters submitted today from the community. I'm the applicant and also the co-owner of the property. I own this property with a relative of mine. The application is to create 2 single-family homes that we will be using for ourselves. I happen to work in the commercial retail real estate industry, so I have some familiarity with parcel maps and those sorts of things. So I know it's typical for a developer to come and submit one of these, but I'm submitting this from my own personal home here tonight. Just want to say I currently reside in the neighborhood, just 4 blocks from this property. My father currently lives in the house at 2183 Tustin Avenue. The proposed rear parcel here will be my primary home. The reason for the accessory dwelling unit is a place for my mother who's growing older. She's single and doesn't like to live alone. So it's kind of a thing that's developing right now with friends of mine and myself, where the dynamics of the family are changing and we got to accommodate the needs. So the city's ADU ordinance, which I know isn't part of this parcel map, but we wanted to be clear and transparent about it from the get-go, that this is something we'd like to have. And from the appearance of the house, which I'll show some elevations in a little bit, you won't be able to tell there's an ADU inside this house. Essentially, what it will provide for her is a cooktop unit and a microwave that's legal and allowed under the code. Wanted to state just a few things about the site and the neighborhood. When we put together this plan for this site, we spent a lot of time reviewing the city code and wanted to bring a plan to the table that conformed to every single aspect of the code. Everywhere from the parcel map to the houses we plan on building, as well as the ADU ordinance, and respect all those without asking for any variances or any modifications to the code. All the setbacks are met throughout the property. In many cases, we exceed the setbacks. We'll have setbacks on the sides of one house that'll be 9 feet. Some setbacks will be 7 feet. So much greater in percentage to the 5-foot minimum setback. Backyards of the houses will be just like an R1 backyard. The house on the front will have a backyard depth of approximately 35 feet deep. And the rear house will have a backyard depth of right around 25 feet. Our intent from the beginning has been to create a project that blends well with the neighborhood, create some attractable architecture that blends with existing homes in the neighborhood and is compatible with, as things change throughout the neighborhood over the coming years. On our street, there's a diverse type of residential housing product right now. There's anywhere from the Tustin Avenue block we're on between 21st and 22nd Street has a mobile home park, an apartment complex, a couple dozen small lot homes, single lots with multiple homes, including the 2 houses to the left of our property, which both have multiple detached properties on one single lot. There are single-family homes on lots of varying sizes. Within the block that borders Santa Ana, Tustin, 21st and 22nd, There are a number of lots that have been split over the years. These lots range from 200 feet, 250 feet or so, and have been parcelized into 2 to 4 parcels for R1 dwellings that have shared driveways or private driveways. Our parcels will be completely separate. There'll be no shared driveways, no HOA, no easements. Everything is clear as the parcel line lies. And it's also important to know this is not a small lot subdivision, and the lots are probably twice the size of a normal small lot subdivision lot. Want to reiterate that we conform to all R1 low-density development standards as defined by the city. Both lots will exceed the 6,000 square foot minimum for the R1 lot size. We will meet the minimum open space area. It's important to note this site right now has about 25, maybe no more than 3,000 square feet of open space. The rest of that space is covered in concrete hardscape and building structures right now. We'll be doubling the open space for landscape areas on the overall site to near almost 7,000 square feet of open space. It'll provide a much, I think, better curb appeal than what exists today. There are no trees on the site today except for one 8-foot tree in the backyard of the property. We'll have many more trees than that. And of course, we'll abide by the city's landscape requirements for drought tolerant and low water usage. We design what we propose is architecture that's compatible with the neighborhood in every way, using first-class materials that are durable, built to last, won't weather, and will present a good, end product for us that we desire to live in, and hopefully for what everyone else in the community thinks is acceptable. I have a few slides of proposed elevations here. This first one, this is the front house that faces the street on a 58-foot wide lot. It has side yards that are 6 to 7 feet in width there. The minimum is 5 feet, or excuse me, I think some go down in like where the water heater pops out to be about 5 feet wide. Traditional architecture with multiple roof lines. One important thing to note on this elevation here is on the sides of the homes, we have small windows on both sides of the homes to have our privacy as well as have our neighbors have privacy. The front house will be the only property that has a small balcony in front. It's not an outdoor living area. It's more so for aesthetic purposes on the front elevation. Most of the bedroom windows that you see on the second level up here will be approximately 18 inches by 18 inches that you may find above a nightstand or something like that at about a 5 or 6 foot elevation in the room. We've oriented all the big windows to be facing the backyard or the front yard, again, to respect privacy here. Next slide, this is the rear house. This is a bit of an L-shaped house. So what you're looking at here is on the left side of the L shape is a one-car garage that's required for an ADU. It must have a one-car garage. So my mother has a place to park her car, and then for the primary residence, my wife and I have a 2-car garage to park our car. With both cars parked in the garage, there's plenty of parking area within the driveway to accommodate the off-site parking requirements. We can probably fit 5 vehicles or so easily in this back driveway area that will still have room to turn around and all that. The front house also will meet the off-street parking requirements. It'll have a 2-car garage. It'll also have 2 parking spots in the driveway for vehicles there. So again, I just want to reiterate that we've been looking for a home in the neighborhood for a long time. It's very tough to find something that worked for us, and the ones that did work out for us, we got beat out by someone else. So it's been a struggle to find something. We found this site that we thought would be appropriate to work within the city's code and framework of the development standards and present something that we think is compatible with the neighborhood, with multiple houses on lots next door and lots down the street that get as small as 3,500 square feet. So that wraps up about everything I have to say, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you very much, sir. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Zick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe not so much a question as a comment, and I think it's an appropriate time to make the comment.
Commissioner Zick, before you do, I don't want to preclude you from doing that. We haven't opened it for public comment yet, so if you're going to
No.
indicate how you're going to vote. Okay, very good. Proceed then. Just doing my job.
Thank you. And what I was going to preface my comment is that at this stage, based on what I've seen you present, what I wanted to express some appreciation for is the fact that you have presented a plan where you are not requesting any variances. Your plan includes a lot of good ideas. And if I'm going to be quoted properly, I've said a good idea is a good idea. What I have also said, though, if I'm going to be quoted correctly, and you can review city council tapes and our previous tape if you want to see how I'm incorrectly quoted. Had you been requesting variances and you explained a bunch of good ideas as to why it was you were requesting variances, unfortunately, a good idea is not the standard by which we evaluate whether or not a variance should be granted or not. The city has very specific findings that must be met in order for a variance to be granted. Just because something is a good idea is not sufficient to find in favor of a variance. So thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay. Vice Chair Harlan.
Just one quick question. So it seems to me that the ADU is integrated into the single-family residence in the rear?
Yes, it is integrated into the main structure of the house. The average person who pulled up would never be able to tell it's in the home. We'll probably have a joining doorway between the two units. The only thing it really does, like I mentioned earlier, is it provides for a legal small kitchenette. As much as I love my mother, I need a little bit of space.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Public comment. Anybody wish to speak on this item, please come forward. Yes.
Here we go again. So how come, I'm sure you really read all these emails, right? So I just want to make sure that we get this in the record, that people, by the way, you know, just sending emails usually get ignored. You've got to come here and speak up. So this gentleman wrote, he lives next door. When this property came up for sale last year, I had the first opportunity to purchase from my 12-year neighbor, Betty. I went to the planning department and spoke with Wendy, whatever her name is, and she assured me that this lot could not be split. How nice. So the next door neighbor goes to, you all read this, right? You do read the emails, right? So the next door neighbor goes to buy the property, and he's told by the planning that this property cannot be split. Shame on whoever did that. I'm calling foul. It's like, who does this guy know that the next door neighbor doesn't, you know, pass the buck to? I'm calling foul on this. Plus, you're wrecking this neighborhood. There's a project that you passed, some of you, that you thought would be great. A few doors down the street, it is a mass of cement. 2 houses that look like giant forts. There's no breathing room. It's atrocious for the neighbors. And he says, oh, this is a traditional house. Well, most houses in this neighborhood have a little breathing room. I don't see any breathing room. Plus, I do not feel that this is a well thought out plan. I don't see all the, you know, when you usually have a plan come before you guys, it's got all the dimensions and everything. This is just a couple of pages. Do you guys have something completely different than we have on the back table here? Okay, and the other thing is, for the record, Mr. Derrico, you called me out for speaking out at the last meeting, but the sober living operator was turning to us and threatening us and said, you're going to be sorry. So I yelled out, that's a threat. Sorry, it was a threat. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Winston Whitney. I'm the neighbor immediately north of the 2183 Tustin property. I live at 2189 Tustin Avenue. As you may have noticed, when the, report initially came out 72 hours before the meeting, there wasn't a single email. Mr. Mossman never approached any of us, so there was no transparency from him. And you'll notice that over the weekend, those 18 emails in opposition to his project and the subdivision of 2183 have occurred just over the weekend. Mr. Mossman also describes his property or subdivision blending well with the neighborhood, architecture compatible with the neighborhood. That's incorrect. The northern part of the 2100 block of Tustin Avenue is made up of large lots that were zoned as R1s and are not subdivided. It's true there is a mobile home at the far end, or a mobile home development at the far end of the 2100 block. I think that is kind of a blight on the neighborhood, and I don't think that necessarily means that two wrongs make a right, and that subdividing into many small units is helpful. So as the next door neighbor, I bought my property in 2010. I paid extra because it was a large lot that had a lot of privacy. By this being subdivided and with the resultant two-story buildings, instead of privacy, I'll now have a large structure looming over my backyard and pool, and I will lose all my privacy. And I think the code describes also suggesting that new developments be consistent with prevailing character of existing development in the immediate vicinity. And in the immediate vicinity, there aren't these micro developments or multiple split lots. There are large lots that are quite attractive, I think, and add to the very nice feel and attractiveness of the neighborhood. So I would ask that the commission deny this proposal for a subdivision at 2183. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. If you could stick around for a minute, Vice Chair Harlan has a question for you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one question. How do you define your neighborhood? Geographically, what are the cross streets or the, give me the boundaries?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
I'm curious what you envision or what you define as your neighborhood in this area. So if you could kind of share for the commission.
Yeah, so I think of my neighborhood as being the northern part, the northern part of the Tustin Avenue block between, just south of 21st Street.
Okay.
So generally the half on the bay side is Newport Beach, essentially. Those houses are Newport Beach. Those are all good-sized lots. And then on our side, on Costa Mesa, there are 4 lots in a row that are good-sized. My lot is 1,300. This 2183 is a 14,000 square foot lot. I believe the one next door to me is close to 12,000 square feet. So that's kind of the character that I think those of us in the neighborhood would like to see and would like to see continue, and that's why there's been this sudden flood of emails, all of which I think are negative and opposed to the subdivision.
Do you also include the lots on 22nd Street that are similar in size?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I'll try to be soft on the matter. So I really don't like to criticize people trying to develop their own property, but on the same token, the fact that somebody at the city kind of fouled up, it's really wrong. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. It's just wrong. But with all due respect to this individual wanting to develop his property, on the same token, if he wants a mother-in-law quarter, he doesn't really have to subdivide the lot. He could actually build another unit on the backside of the property and keep it all in one unison, because I think what probably most of the neighbors are going to be complaining about is the mass of the structure that doesn't meet the criteria of the neighborhood. So if you guys go out there and take a look, most of the houses there are single story on a wider lot. Now you're going to have two giant towering structure on, granted, he meets the criteria by 5 feet, but I guarantee you if you go back and look at the parcel map and figure out the easements and the setbacks, he probably won't meet it. Because if staff can make an error on the grandeur of things, trust me, they probably blew it on the 5 foot. I'd stake money on that one. But it's the mass. And if he wants a granny quarter in the back because his mother, bless her heart, wants to live in the back unit and she needs extra parking, that could all be accommodated on a 13,000 square foot lot without going 2 stories and without subdividing it. Because I'm going to tell you exactly what's going to happen. As life goes on and people pass on, that lot will be sold. And I understand, they're in it for the dollar. Otherwise, they wouldn't have bought it a year ago. They would have been a long-time resident trying to modify a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Good evening.
Hello. Hello. My name is Terry Stewart. I am the owner of 2179, which is directly on the other side, on the beach side to this property. I'm the one who went down to the city and spoke with Wendy Shee, and she informed me that the minimal lot width would be 75 feet to be able to split the lot. So I was, at that time, probably going to rally my resources with some friends and buy the property and develop it into a larger single story with an accessory unit in the back so that I did not have, as Wynn states, a large 2-story, and in this case, 2 2-story homes right next to my house looking into my backyard. I bought my house and built it 12 years ago. I bought a large lot because I wanted space around my house. I wanted privacy, and I knew the value of large lots. I think breaking down the lot next door to me into 2 lots devalues my property because it's now I have 2 small homes next to me as opposed to 1 larger one. And I go back to your own information that you give out under CD 7A2 that says to preserve the scale and character of the Costa Mesa's established residential neighborhoods. And it says the prevailing character of existing development in the immediate vicinity. It does not say down the block. It does not say where the trailer park is, somewhere else. It says the immediate vicinity. When I walk out of my house, I think the immediate vicinity is the homes I can see directly around me, which none of them are smaller lots like this. All of them are larger type estate lots, and they've been there a long time. And in its current state, I am opposed to having 2 2-story homes directly next to me. There's already problems with the traffic that comes down that street so close to the stop sign. Many times I can't get out of my driveway for long periods of time. There's minutes that I sit there sometimes with traffic coming both ways. I don't think it's going to be any easier being any closer to the stop sign. And once again, I just believe that our planning commission is here to protect our residents. And just because they are possible to do this doesn't mean that it's the right thing to do. So I, in its current state, am opposed to doing the lot split, and I hope that you will deny it. Thank you.
Sir, if I could ask you a quick question. You're at 2179?
Yes.
So it looks like there's 2 units on that property. What is the back unit?
It is an accessory apartment.
Is it 2-story?
It is not.
Okay.
The front house has 700 feet of 2-story area and 2,100 feet downstairs.
Okay, so your lot is not subdivided. It's 1R1 lot.
It is not subdivided.
Okay, so, okay, great, thank you.
I built 100% with no variances and no exceptions to anything.
Yeah, I'm not questioning that. I just wanted to kind of understand the configuration of your lot
And on top of-
vis-a-vis the applicant's lot.
And on top of that, by seeing 18 letters that people are denying, which I know that 6 or 8 of them are the homes in my immediate area, that it's not that popular of an idea. in its current
Understood.
state.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm Brian Harris. I reside at 1912 Tustin Avenue, which is directly across from the property in question. The property in question, a little history, was the family home of Kerm Rima, from Kerm Rima Hardware, one of our city's founding business owners. And the house expanded over the years as their family expanded. And the problem I see is we're just taking these nice big lots and we're going to chop them up. How many of them are along 22nd Street that are willing, there's the lot at 331 22nd Street. I'd love to buy it because when that family passes and dies, there will be 10 houses on that thing. And it's not what the east side of Costa Mesa was built for. Our infrastructure can't handle it. Our streets are so beaten up because of all the extra cars that we're building extra houses for. The sewer system isn't handling it properly. We have the jet routers out in the city all the time because we're not getting enough, we don't have capacity to handle all this extra development. The madness of overdevelopment needs to stop. And this is not a bad place to start. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to this matter? Okay, seeing none, I'll have the applicant come back up. And if you wish to offer any closing comments or rebuttal comments, please.
To what the neighbors had said, I really feel, we've worked within the constraints of the city's requirements here. The massing of the houses, while bigger than what's there now, will not be nearly as intrusive, possibly, as other homes are in the neighborhood. We've tried to work here with different roofing elevations. While this lot could accommodate a house that was probably 150 feet long in length or so, we're going to have 2 homes that'll have 55 feet between the rear wall of the front house and the front wall of the rear house. So there'll be a pretty large gap there between the 2 houses, allowing plenty of ample sunlight through, respecting everyone's privacy with small windows on the side of the home, and the only balcony on the project will be one balcony on the front house that'll be facing the street. We won't have any balconies looking into neighbors' yards. There'll be no rooftop decks or anything of that nature here. Trying to keep it as simple as we can and as straightforward as possible.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And I will close the public hearing and bring it back, the matter back up to the dais and ask the commissioners if there's any comments or a motion. Commissioner Woods.
I have a question for staff. Suppose this gentleman didn't subdivide his lot, but instead wanted to put a 7,000 square foot home. As long as he met the appropriate setbacks and building height, would he be within his right to do that?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so he could potentially say, you know what, I don't want to subdivide, I'm going to put a 7,000 square foot home on this lot. As long as as long as it's meeting all the setbacks and landscaping requirements and open space, he's well within his right to do that.
That's right. As long as it's subject to the same development standards of the R1 zone. If it meets those requirements, then it's allowed.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Harlan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few questions for staff. So my understanding is that the south side of 22nd Street was originally county property, which may explain the size of some of these lots. But I just want to clarify, it appears that at least one lot had a lot split. That was at 371 and 369. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. This slide here depicts, the triangle here would depict the property that was subdivided. It was back in, let me grab it. It was back in 1993, but it was still part of the county at that time that property was subdivided, and then was later incorporated into the city.
Right, so we essentially have a flag lot there, or it looks like there's a kind of odd jog, but it's essentially a flag lot, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then secondly, just as a matter of procedure, what we have before us tonight is simply approval of the map. It's not the development of the homes themselves.
That's correct, provided the proposed plans meet code.
Right. So at some future date, if the applicant comes forward with something that requires no variances, deviations, administrative adjustments, we're never going to see it. It'll be just a by right approval.
It would be approved over the counter. The only time it would come up to the level of planning commission is as part of the plan check process for two-story construction. Staff sends a notice of zoning approval to the abutting property owners. That decision can be appealed to planning commission with the appropriate fees paid.
Okay, thank you very much.
Commissioner Zick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So a lot of these letters have a similar basis for their concern, maybe not by coincidence. And the basis, and we've heard it tonight, talks about preserving the character of the established neighborhood and consistency with the prevailing character. What it doesn't say, and I've got a question about that, but what it doesn't say is that the development must meet the city's codes and ordinances and design guidelines, because apparently this project does. So my question for you is, based on your recommendation of approval, what nature of a conforming project would be inconsistent with the prevailing character, such that you would not find it to be consistent? Can you give me an example of what conforming development plan could be presented where you would find that it did not meet with the prevailing character of the immediate neighborhood?
Chair and Commissioners, in order to determine conformity in this case, staff looks at a number of factors. Because it's a parcel map that's before us, the primary issue is lot width, lot depth, and lot area. The specific development that goes on the property is a separate process. A property owner can subdivide their property and not propose any development for some time. So we are looking at the subdivision of the property only. So looking at lot sizes in the general vicinity, first we consider does the subdivision meet the minimum lot size for the R1 zone, which is specified in the code. The logic behind that is that if you're meeting a minimum lot size for the R1 zone, that it's by definition consistent. However, the second part of that equation that we consider is the lot sizes of the surrounding area. So we did the same in this case. We looked at lot sizes on Tustin Avenue as well as 22nd Street, and we found the proposal to be in general consistency with lot sizes in the area in general.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Commissioners, any motion on the matter? I'll bite the bullet. So I move that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution to find that the project is categorically exempt from the provisions of CEQA under CEQA guidelines section 15315, minor land divisions, and approved tentative parcel map 2018-136, subject to the findings in Exhibit A and conditions of approval in Exhibit B.
Second.
And that's seconded by Commissioner Colbert. Any comments on the motion? Call for the question.
Oh, I had a quick comment.
Wait, Commissioner Woods. Sorry.
I wasn't fast enough, sorry. Listen, I really appreciate the proposed use of an ADU to support a multi-generational household. I think really that's what was intended with that ordinance. But I also don't recall specifically talking about these kinds of lots in an R1 zone and the resulting sort of, not density, because density is described as dwelling units per acre in a planning sense, but just that perception of density. And at first, I really like that you're using the property creatively, and I called planning staff today to make sure that it was consistent with zoning code, because if it wasn't, I mean, if it was like 199 feet, I would not support this motion. But it's pretty clear in the zoning code, and I can't go against that, and I think that the argument that, it may not be consistent with the scale and intensity, with the scale of surrounding properties, I know that neighborhood. My kids went to Sunshine Preschool for many, many years. I had two of them go through back to back, and I used to park along the street, and I think I parked along in front of that house many, many times. It's very different, there's a row of houses that went up, and they are on very tiny, tiny little lots. And I would argue that, you're right up against a R2 medium density zoning, and it is what it is, just read your zoning. My husband and I are looking for a larger lot in Costa Mesa, and now that I know that there's this small exception, we're going to be really careful about which lot we choose, and we're going to look very carefully into what the surrounding lots and what their dimensions are before we make our decision. But again, I'll be supporting this motion. I think it's consistent with what's written in the zoning code, and I wish you luck.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Woods. Vice Chair Harlan. Did you have comments?
I do now.
Yes.
Forced me. I'll concur with Commissioner Woods, especially with regards to the ADU. I mean, I think that's fantastic that you want to take care of your mother, as we all should. It is unusual, in my experience, to have ADUs that are actually incorporated into the home. So I want to applaud you for that. I think that's a creative way of using space, and actually it's an efficient way as well. But I think my comments speak more to what I think is an issue between design and land use. So tonight, all that is really before us is a map, and it's whether or not we agree that the division of land is appropriate here. And as Commissioner Woods pointed out, the lots meet the minimum requirements, so by definition, they're consistent. And I know some people may argue that how you divide land and where should really be the concern, but my primary issue here, and I'm supporting this, is that we have this hyper-localized view of what our neighborhood is and what character is. I live on the east side, and I think one of the things I appreciate most is that we have a diverse character. We have a very clear grid pattern, but we have, Ms. Parker, please. I've been giving you your airtime for years. Afford me a little bit of respect, please. In any event, I think what people are confusing is design with land use, and the comments, and I read all of them, they relate specifically to one policy in the general plan that is specific to architectural design, and it talks about scale, but that will come up when the buildings are actually proposed and developed, not necessarily the lot size. And while lot size can contribute to design, that's really not before us at the moment. So, I look at this corner. I've been here dozens, hundreds of times over the years. My kids went to Kaiser Boys and Girls Club. I'm very familiar with this area. I think we have to take, at least in my mind, a broader view of what our neighborhood is and how it relates to these kinds of applications. And to my mind, this is entirely consistent with this area.
Okay, thank you. Any last comments? Call for the question.
That motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, and that decision is final in 7 days unless appealed to the city council. Thank you very much, and that brings us to reports. Public services.
None tonight, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mejia. Development Service report, Mr. Curtis.
I also have none this evening, Mr.
All right,
Chairman.
and Mr. Preziosi, City Attorney report?
No report.
Okay, thank you. We will then stand in adjournment till the regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting of March 11th. Good night.